Good evening. Welcome to the Gregg Town Council regular meeting of September 5th, 2023. As usual, we are holding this meeting in person and online with a link provided in the agenda header. I'll begin with roll call. Councilor Meany?
Present.
Councilor McGuire?
Present.
Councilor Gass?
Present.
Councilor Height is excused for today, and I'm Councilor Chapel. To my right is Town Manager Nate Rudy. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up is the consent agenda, which includes minutes from August 15th, August 23rd, and August 28th. Does anyone have any items from the consent agenda that they need to remove for individual edits?
No.
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ann?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay, next up is public comments on non-agenda items. Limit 3 minutes per person. Comments are intended for information sharing, not discussion. Comments in excess of 3 minutes are welcome at the end of the agenda prior to adjournment. Does anyone here or online have any comments for non-agenda items? See any online either? Okay, so I'm going to close public comment at 7:02 p.m. Any adjustments to the agenda to be proposed?
I've none.
I have none.
No, me neither. Okay, so we will move on to presentation. We are discussing, let me say, Town Manager Rudy has submitted his resignation 2 weeks ago. His last day will be September 8th, this coming Friday. He's happy to have accepted a position at the U.S. State Department as a Foreign Services Officer, and we are certainly sad to see him go, but wish him the best. So we'll be discussing this evening a search for an interim town manager and also how we will proceed with filling the full-time town manager position, potentially with a search firm or some other process. Nate, can you just give us a quick update on what you've been working on?
Council, in your packet this evening, starting on page 16, you will see a proposal from Don Garish of Eaton Peabody, who's here this evening as a guest, for assisting you in hiring a new town manager. You may recall that Don was also the town's assistant in hiring me when your town manager position came open last time. So Don's offering his services again. I have contacted some other firms that historically offer this service, and they're MMA I contacted, they're not available. There may be other firms available to perform this service for you if you care to publish a request for proposal or qualification. You can see if there are other candidates, but Don has proactively submitted this for you. On page 22 of your packet, you will also find a proposed contract for Don's services as interim town manager. In my understanding, he's available fairly immediately to fill that role. Is that right? Okay. And his resume is also included on page 24 and 25 of your packet. Supplemental to your packet, there was also material requested by Councilor McGuire on behalf of the council and presented by Josh Tiffany, the library director, who has also been serving recently as the Director of Communications and Information Technology. Josh is also available and willing to serve as interim town manager under some different proposal based on the fact that he is already a town employee, so modification of his duties and wages, salary. So I submitted that to you, and I've provided you with copies of that, both in email and a print version for your meeting. That includes Josh's updated resume also. And there's also a copy of the town manager job description from the Human Resources Director, John Hart, that was included in material that was circulated today. So you have a candidate for helping to assist hiring a town manager. You have 2 candidates for the interim manager position. And I'm happy to help answer any questions. I'm sure the candidates are also here and happy to answer any questions you might have for them.
Thank you, Nate. I'm inclined to ask each of the individuals that have submitted content to come up and just talk for a minute. If is that something? Okay. Mr. Garish, would you like to just come up and give us an overview of your? Well, you have 2 proposals: one for the search firm work, and the second for the interim town manager position.
Thank you. This is on?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to submit a proposal to you. Let's first talk about doing the search. I was involved with your last search 2.5, 3 years ago. Worked with the council on that process. The process that we use is to really work with the council, set out a timeline on how it's going to work, working with you on when, who's going to be involved, when you want to start the process. And what we provide is soup to nuts in terms of working with the council. We'll work with you to get an advertisement out, decide on where you want to advertise it. We offer another service that some agencies don't. We will meet with your department heads and ask them what they're looking for in a new town manager to get their input. And if you want, I am available to hold a public meeting here, invite the public to come in and ask them what they're looking for in a new town manager. We put that document together, and it's a public document, so people can see that. Once, if we're hired, we will put the ad out. We will collect the resumes. We will, once a week, let you know how many resumes we received, whether they're from Maine or from out of state. And once we get them all and the deadline is done, we will provide a copy of all resumes to the council. We will have looked at them, and we will give you a recommendation of those we think you ought to consider to interview. And of those that we recommend, we will have done preliminary background checks on them. But you will get all the resumes. We will then meet with the council and decide on who you would like to interview, set up the interviews, provide draft questions that you can use or add to, set them up, be at the interviews, go through the process with you for the interviews. At the end of the first interviews, depending on the candidates and the numbers, probably have a second round, narrow it down to finalists, go through the, once you've decided on finalists, we will set up time to do the second interviews. We will do complete background checks of your finalists, criminal, financial. We will also do follow-up with references and provide documents on your finalists to you. Have second rounds of interviews. We will work with you on deciding who was going to be involved in those final interviews, whether it's just the council. Some places we worked with department heads have been available to do interviews of the finalists. Not that they make a decision, but just to give you some input of what they see are positives or concerns about candidates. Once you have second round of interviews, you decide on the candidates. I'm available to negotiate a contract with the candidates with the input from the council, if you would like. So that's in a nutshell what we do. Done over 60 of these since we've worked for the Eaton Peabody Consulting Group. Excuse me. And the key to it is getting a timeline so that you have a timeline, candidates have a timeline, so the process moves along, so everybody knows what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. I will say to you, having been doing these, it's a tough field out there for candidates. We're not getting the quality or the numbers of candidates. Not saying we won't, but it's been tough out there. And I'm here. If we go through it once and we don't find anyone, I continue to be here and work through you until you hire someone. Couple of communities, we've been out twice, 3 times, trying to find the person. Others, we've been successful after the first process. It's going to take between, I'd say, 2.5 to 3 months, if everything goes well, to have candidates available, have the candidate, and depending what that candidate is doing, it could be another 30 to 45 days before they start because of their commitment. So that's, in a nutshell, what we do, and I can answer any questions you might have about that process.
Thank you for that overview. Yeah, one of my primary questions was how long a typical process is taking nowadays, but you've answered that. Does anyone else have questions for Mr. Garish?
No, that was pretty clear.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just if I
Go
could.
ahead, Dan.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's a more difficult field to find candidates in that. Are you finding that you're advertising further afield than you have in the past?
I think we don't recommend doing advertisement in newspapers. We think that's an expensive process that the return isn't there.
It's not where people are looking anymore.
Huh?
It's not where people are
No.
looking.
We would recommend that you do it the normal places, which would be Maine Municipal Association. That's free. Still looking at ICMA, which is the International City Managers Association. That's $450 to advertise for a month. Some communities we've worked with, have advertised specifically in New England region, New Hampshire Municipal Association, Massachusetts Municipal Association, to try to get some local flavor there. We've tried to use other processes, and we haven't been successful. But we're open if there's other areas that you feel you might want to look at. But those are the main ones that we work with and have been successful with.
The last time when we were searching for a position, I think that we did advertise in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the listings have fees for advertising. Are those fees included in your
No.
fee, or are they in addition to
Their
that?
addition,
Okay.
their addition.
What kind of experience does Eaton Peabody have with searching outside of the New England area? Is that something you have done in the past or might consider doing?
Just so I'm clear,
Yeah.
we're not headhunters. We don't
Yeah.
go after candidates. If I
Okay.
know somebody is looking and they may not have sent a resume, I will call them.
Okay.
But I do not go searching out managers. Having said that, it's been mixed from out of state, be honest with you.
Okay.
Usually what we try to look at is that there is a tie to Maine somewhere in someone who applies that
Yeah.
has an understanding of what Maine is about. Now, they may have gone to school at a college here, or their grandparents have moved here, but we pretty closely talk to them about what they're getting themselves into. Not saying it's terrible to come to Maine, but it's different here. Someone from Arizona that's never worked in the winter might want to think about
Yeah.
what that is to move here. Sometimes the right person, as an example, we did the search for Damascotta a number of years ago, and the assistant manager in a big community there just bought a house. He was leaving in Damascotta. The manager left. He came, moved in. He was there 10 years and just left. We've done it in other places where it's worked out very well. Some places, you just need to be very clear when you do background searches and follow-up that people know what they're getting themselves into. Not that it's bad here, but it's just different.
No, yeah, understood. Dan?
I know that other communities have been using firms from out of state to
Yeah.
do some of their searches in part to broaden that. I know the last time we were looking for a manager, we did have a candidate from Arizona, interestingly enough, who made it fairly far through the process. You know, I think that the fee that you're proposing is reasonable. I don't really have interest, personally, I don't think, in looking for an agency outside the state to help us out. I don't know how others
Agreed,
feel,
yeah.
but, yeah, I think it's, I think the other pieces that you mentioned, you know, around the inclusiveness, we definitely want to have, you know, public input. We definitely want to have the department heads' input.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think those two extras that you do, you know, are helpful for us too.
Could you explain a little bit how you've used public input in the past on other searches? Or I've heard some communities form a committee that involve residents. You mentioned a public meeting. What is your preference when you're involving residents in this process?
The process that mostly we've used has to invite the public to a meeting.
Okay.
We'll put an ad out with my email address on it. Public can come and give input, what they're looking for in the new manager. We even ask the questions, what are the issues facing Gray in the next 5 years that the manager will have to deal with? If they can't come to the meeting, they can email to me. And I open that up to any employee in the town too. Now, I get them all and I put them in a document, not this person said this, but just the thoughts that everybody says. And it gives a picture of what the community's looking for. I would even ask that the council give me your thoughts so that we can put them together. Some communities, not recently, but some communities in the past have decided to have citizen groups involved. I'm not that they shouldn't be, but my philosophy has been you're elected to make the decision, and that if you can give the input from the citizens at a meeting, that's important. The other thing that we can do that we've done in the past, we stopped it during COVID, is when we have the finalists, have what I call a meet and greet, have them both come, have the public come in and meet the candidates, just to have a little more input from the citizens. Hasn't happened as much since COVID, but that's something we can get back to do. And we've done that in a number of communities. Sometimes we get nobody. Sometimes we get, the biggest one we've ever had was 80 or 90 in
Oh, wow.
Rockland a number of years ago. So,
Okay.
so that's my
Yeah,
thought on
that's
it.
a unique idea. That's interesting, yeah.
I think too that, I mean, anyone would have the opportunity to, you know, forward input to you. I think too, you know, making sure all the people that serve on the different committees also, you know,
Yeah.
understand there's a possible role for them. They're already doing work in a number of different places, so I think they might be another group that would have some good input too.
Does anyone else have any questions about the proposal for the search for a full-time manager?
No questions from me.
Nate, what is the process for securing a firm? Do we need to vote on that separately, or how does that?
Can you put that on the agenda?
It is-
No, we have the interim manager appointment on the agenda, but we didn't have this. I mean, we could amend the agenda if necessary, but if folks feel like they're ready to vote on something.
So, for a budget item of this size, the finance policy would stipulate that generally you would want to get multiple proposals. However,
Yeah,
under the presumption, which I think is valid, that there aren't very many sources for this proposal, you could elect as a council to do a sole source award of the contract to Eaton Peabody. It is not an agenda item yet, but you could have a vote to add it as an agenda item and vote on that if you chose to.
Go ahead.
I just have
Yeah.
a question, sorry. When could you get started on a search if you were to if we
Yeah.
did a contract with you?
Once we have a signed contract, we'll set up a meeting and start it as soon as we can. So next week, if you wanted to, if we were to move ahead.
Okay. Do we, I mean, our next meeting is the, what is it, the 19th, I believe?
Yeah.
I'm a little hesitant to put it on the agenda, like, right now, just because we haven't really vetted it,
Yeah, I think putting in, you know,
but,
to be honest with you, I don't know how it will turn out, but I think you're right. I think it is something we should explore between now and the next meeting, and
Okay.
put it on the agenda for the next meeting to make a decision. The temptation is to act now, just from a standpoint of, the sooner we start, the sooner we finish, but,
I think a period of 2 weeks, though, is not gonna make or
No.
break the
No.
process. Yeah, okay, why don't we'll put that as an agenda item for the 19th. Nate, or you're not gonna be
Okay,
here,
then
but
I'll make a
I'll
note.
let
Yeah.
John know, or whomever. Mr. Garish, thank you. Did you want to talk at all about your offer to serve as an interim manager in that capacity?
During the last 12 years, I've been interim manager in a number of communities. I put it on my resume, anywhere from small communities, Greene to Damariscotta to Poland to Auburn to South Portland, Wyndham, Casco. So I've been interim in those communities when I've done the manager searches. I sent you a proposed contract. It's the draft contract we use for doing that work. It's for a minimum of 3 days a week, and it's on a per-day basis, and that day is from when I start to when I end. There's a meeting that night, I stay and go to the meetings. So it is something that I've done a number of times. It's pretty straightforward, I think, in terms of finding someone outside the organization to do that work,
Okay.
so.
When you say a minimum of 3 days per week, would that be inclusive of any meetings we have, or are you talking more about the day-to-day operations of the town?
No, it would be, if there's a meeting that night, that's part of the day.
Okay,
So if, whatever your hours of operation, and then you have a meeting later that night, that's one day.
okay, I see what you're saying.
You mean specifically a town council meeting
Yeah, or other meetings.
or other meetings?
Yeah.
Where your presence would be
I've done this
valuable?
enough to know that even though you say 3 days, it's not really 3 days.
Fair enough, yeah.
And I understand what that means with telephone calls and other meetings that I will need to. Now, I've done a number, sometimes I will do a schedule for the month, and you all will see it based upon meetings, but I sometimes would do 2 half-day, 1 full day, 1 full day. I might be here 4 days, but it'll be a half day on a couple days and full days to make up those 3 days.
Yep.
But it will be a minimum of 3 days.
Okay,
So,
and Nate had mentioned that, so correct me if I'm wrong, that you are willing to serve as an interim manager, but only if we're using Eaton PBD as a search firm, is that correct?
yeah, it's not that, I want to control my own fate, be honest with you, so that the
Yeah.
process goes forwards. And I'm part of that process to make sure it moves. And it's just that I took one job when I didn't, and it was not, didn't work out the way I thought it should be. So I like to be on the process. Plus, be honest with you, it helps me to be part of the community, working with candidates, to understand the community when they have questions to me. It's really worked out very well that way.
Okay. Go ahead, Ann, yeah.
A couple questions. So you had mentioned mileage as a separate, separate from your fee, which is understandable. I just wanted to make sure, are we talking about mileage, to and from your home?
Just
or-
to and from here,
Okay.
whatever I do here, I won't charge you for
Okay.
that.
And could you describe kind of what a typical day would look like for you as if you were on site? You would be meeting with department heads and, what kind of stuff? How do you see your role as interim town manager that may be distinct from a regular town manager?
Well, I think, first of all, the interim is here to make sure things continue to go forward. Make sure the regular activity of the community continues. My goal would be have department head meetings probably every 2 weeks to continue the process. I'm not sure what you have. I would want to get around and meet all your department heads, meet the employees, meet each one of you so I get to know you and understand what's happening in the community. So the goal is to keep things moving to make sure that the town continues to function the way it should be and can. But the other issue is that if there are issues that need to be dealt with that come up, certainly I will deal with those. One of the goals I've always felt as an interim is to help deal with the council, with the department heads or the citizens, deal with issues so they're taken care of when a new manager comes in, if I can. And I think that's a role that is helpful to the process going forward. So hopefully if I was selected, we could continue moving, dealing with issues that you have, the town has. I asked Nate when I talked to him about, was there anything out there that I needed to know about? Mentioned that trying to get an auditor is a big issue, and I understand that. I've dealt with other communities on that. The other thing I would tell you, I am also on the Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust. I'm a trustee of the Health Trust. I've been on that for 40 years, so I've been on to, I'm getting off, but I am a member to that. So I keep my fingers involved in what's going on in the communities. But, what I do is, the normal things, but I think it's important, I'm gonna be new, department heads, just to get to know everyone, they get to know me, so that at least there's some personal contact. Invite the citizens to come in, if they wanna come in and meet with me, we can do that too. But I don't think there's a normal day doesn't usually happen, and
Yeah.
Nate can probably tell you that. It's whatever happens that day. If it goes well, we're all positive about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments, questions?
No.
Thank you very much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Josh, would you like to come up, just not to put you on the spot?
Good evening, council. I'm Josh Tiffany, pleased to meet you all again.
Yeah.
So I've been the library director for the town of Gray since 2013 and a resident here since 2017. In the last year, under Nate Rudy, I've also become the communications and information technology director. Through all this processes, throughout my entire career here, I have made a habit of having really good communication and working relationships with every department that I've come in contact with. Immediately upon assuming the directorship position, 3 weeks later, we started the renovation of the library. So that was a lot of networking with Doug, as well as with the contractor, as well as with the construction, demolition staff, maintaining the library services during that. And that was the foundation that I really started a lot of wonderful working relationships that have worked through to this day. In the last year, by being able to get a much more close view of the entire workings of the town, both by working the camera operator in the back as well as helping craft the communications message, I've developed a very intimate knowledge of a lot more different facets and functions of the town. And I very much believe that these experiences would lend itself to this moment in time. I have always led by believing that people are there to do the right thing, and I'm there to empower them to do that. And if there is one thing through my management experience that goes back to 1994 that would be a consistent comment on me, is that I am fair with people. I really want to work with people to achieve the common goals, and I really think that the staff respects me, and I think the department has respect me, and I think that the council, I have very good working relationships with several of you who have served on the trustees as well as on the CTAC. So I believe that now I could be very much a benefit to the town of Gray. I know that my experience in this position is non-existent except for the fact that I am good at working with a lot of different people on a lot of different topics. I'm very good at keeping various tasks juggled, and I'm also very good at listening. But beyond that, I hope what I could add to this moment in time is just a peace and calm so we can transition into the next town manager's position. And I can hopefully, again, as you said, present the next town manager with a staff that is a little bit more brought together, pulled together, and a little bit more of a coherent unit so that we have a better position to move on to in the near future.
Okay. Thank you for putting your hat in the ring, and we certainly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I must say, I really cannot believe I'm here doing this. Saying I could even think to do this, but
You're still
I
there.
had enough people around the town say that you would be really good at this to give me the sense that, yes, I believe that it could be.
Okay. I guess my main concern is you're excellent library director. We appreciate your input and your guidance and leadership there. And you've also taken on these other departments this last year. I just want to make sure there's space for you to still do those jobs, and I don't want this to, if we appointed you to this position, hinder your responsibilities there. So can you just highlight for us how you think you might manage that?
This moment hit at actually a perfect time. Can I? Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, Kyle Hediniak, who is currently working in the back, will soon be named the interim manager of communication and information technology. He has done an incredibly good job through the year, and I think that with the last couple pieces of tutelage that I can help pass along to him, he will make a fine department head and director of that. So I will be minimizing my relationship with that, while then also still being directly Kyle's boss and helping craft the message of communication, so it comes back again. And at the library, after almost a year and a half of being short-staffed, we have finally found a wonderful full-time employee, and if the name Marie Mori means anything to people who've been here for a while, she was the director. She started working at the library in '96, was the director there for over a decade, has been gone in the decade I've been there, has worked at other libraries, and now wants to return full-time as a simple circulation clerk because she loves the community and wants to come home. I think that infusion of both ability, talent, and history will lend a certain amount of ability for me then to pass off the library to the assistant director, while still maintaining make sure that that's my home, and that's where I'm going to go back to when this is done. So that is what I definitely will think will shine at that time. So if there was any moment in time anywhere in the last year, I would not be standing before you. But this confluence of events seems to line up perfectly to allow me to take on this responsibility while still maintaining leadership and solid performance by the other departments.
Okay. I saw that Darcel was willing to take on more responsibility.
Yes.
Have you had a conversation
Yes,
with
I
her?
have.
Okay.
As well as, and then still the promise of, I'm not leaving you, I'm still going to be there, I can still help with certain parts of it, but certainly there are greater expectations on her side, and she
Okay.
is really, and definitely sees why I would be good in this position as well.
And I assume Kyle has also had input on this. Okay.
I was a little surprised he didn't come dancing out of here when I mentioned it again, so.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions or comments?
Not at this point,
Josh?
yeah.
Not at all.
No?
Just to appreciate you put.
Yeah, we really
throwing
do,
your hat in
Josh.
the ring.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. It's great to have another option, and you have just done a tremendous job
Yeah.
for us over the last decade, so we've been very fortunate to have you as our
Thank you.
library director.
And I do just want to say too, if the decision is not me, I absolutely understand it, and you put me back in the library, and that is where I'm happy and very happy to be. So again, I thank you for that. So definitely,
Win-win
whichever way you
either way.
choose to go is absolutely the best.
All right,
Okay.
thank
I mean,
you.
do you have questions for, I want to make sure we've answered your wants and needs also.
My only real concern is, apart from, I believe in the packet that I had some extensive vacation time at the end of the year that I
Yeah.
would like to kind of block out. And then beyond that, for a timeline, I do understand the ability to locate a new town manager might be time dependent. I'm a little bit hesitant to truly get involved in the budgeting process for FY '25. I am very happy to set the stage to get everyone's packets delivered, to work through whatever we need to work with you to communicate that back to department heads. Once actually the kind of cutting and that management comes in, I am a little bit hesitant to start to get in with that right now.
Okay.
Again, conditions on the ground in 5 months will maybe totally different, but I really would like this to be a kind of more known, shorter term, or at least 5-month engagement, and then beyond that, we'll see where we all stand.
Okay.
That's my biggest hesitation.
Okay. Good to know. Dan?
Yeah, I think that would be our goal too.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we haven't had a chance to autopsy the budget process yet because it isn't completely done. But I'm hoping that we will put together a more streamlined, more clear-cut process for the future that will be significantly different than what we've just gone through, so.
And I very much think I could be, during that time period, if I am
Yeah.
still a town manager, I think I could be a great asset in that process, both, getting the feedback from the team members and relaying that onto you and see
Yeah.
what common ground we could all find.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry, just gathering. Well, we are gonna circle back to that, appointment later today. But that's good information to have going into that conversation. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the public hearing portion of the evening. First up is the first reading and public hearing to review proposed changes to the zoning ordinance, chapter 402. Changes include the addition of a new section 402.8.11, self-storage facility standards, and amendment of the village center design standards. So I'm gonna open the public hearing at 7:36 PM. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the proposed zoning ordinance change for self-storage facilities? You could just state your name and address.
Scott Liberty. We start out by reminding everybody what the word team means. Team stands for together, we all achieve more. And right now, I think the town of Gray is in a unique situation where we can bring the business community and the council, town manager, what's left of Nate's time, to get rid of the stigma we have of being anti-business. This town has a stigma. I hear it everywhere. I'm a developer, I'm a contractor. I hang around with contractors and other developers, and the town has a stigma. So I think this is a really unique opportunity to show the community that you have heard the people. We've had, this is the 5th public hearing on this issue. We've had multiple people come up and speak out against this proposed ordinance, mainly the 300-foot setback in a 10-foot setback zone. Not a single person has spoken in favor of this ordinance, and it just really, I think by not compromising on this, we're just going to perpetuate the same stigma that Gray is anti-business. And I really think if you compromise even a little, it would go a long ways. I've met with every one of you, including Matt Height, with the exception of the chair, which we had a cross-communication on telephone numbers. And I'm convinced that this council is not anti-business. And I wasn't convinced of that until I met individually with everybody. And I was pleasantly surprised. And so I really think this is an opportunity for us to move forward. We embrace your village concept. We do. I would love to see this be more like Freeport. I think it would be a wonderful thing, or whatever that picture is. I mean, that's the picture I get, is of nice shopping areas, sidewalks, shops. We embrace it, but not 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles out in the commercial district, which is also in the light manufacturing overlay district. It just doesn't seem right. And right now, it's currently out there in the commercial light manufacturing overlay district. It's a 10-foot zone. I'm telling you all this, you all know this. You've heard us speak multiple times, but I want to do it for the record. And we're going back 300 feet, and we're only singling out one business, self-storage. Self-storage has almost no traffic. It has no impact on water, no impact on sewer, has no impact on the schools, and it's a great tax base. It just defies logic. And I honestly believe that this is a solution looking for a problem. I don't see a problem. Now, I own the Gray Self-Storage, have 116 units. I've been open almost a year, and I've only got 50 rented. I feel bad for Michael Pride. I mean, we've talked on the phone, and he paid too much. He's kind of has to go forward, but I think he's going to have a problem down there to make that profitable. And I don't see anybody else going to build anymore. This state has been oversaturated. And I get to 50, and then someone moves out. Because inflation has changed the game. People used to put their junk in these things, and they would leave them. They didn't care. $150 a month, whatever it was not a big deal to them. Now it's a big deal. They want to get in, and they want to get out. So I'm just giving you that as a backdrop that I don't think we have a problem. And the goal, how I was told it originally, was to preserve the road frontage for the type of businesses that you want to encourage. That's not happening. Commercial development is in the tank. And what is happening is the residential development are saying, oh goody, we can pick up this property cheap because the developers like me are dumping the front lots, and we only have 10-foot setbacks. So this is great for them. They build little short driveways. They don't have to worry about their side setbacks, their rear setbacks. They're in a 10-foot zone. So since this moratorium has gone into effect, it's going on 2 years now, the lot next to mine, where I wanted to do a $5 million climate control self-storage facility, is now a little residential house that's listed for $435,000. That don't seem like a really smart thing, in my opinion. That was a lost opportunity right there. Next to coal farms. What's happened? Those 2 lots have been sold. Same builder. Good guy, by the way. I don't blame him. If I was a builder, I'd be jumping on these things too. Now, he's eating up that road frontage. So you've lost those road frontage. I know next to me that they're getting ready to try to do a development on the other side of me. You're not going to get what you want on that frontage, and it's going to be eaten up by residential development. So I just don't think you're accomplishing the goal you want. And if that really is the goal you want, and I hesitate to suggest this because I don't want to make any restrictions. I don't like restrictions, but you really should restrict residential. Right? It's the common thought here, because if you're just going to pick on self-storage facilities, they're just going to get all eaten up. And then not the last point, but another point is, when you have a building like coal farms, for example, coal farms is approximately 90 feet wide. It's right on the road. It's right on the road right of way. We all know that. 90 feet. Okay. Well, there's a bunch of land behind coal farms. So if Brad wants to build a nice self-storage facility like mine, he's got to waste another 110 feet. He's got to go back before he even starts where the line is, and then he has to set his setbacks. That's just creating sprawl. It doesn't make sense. The road frontage has already been eaten up. So the goal of saving the road frontage for some other business, well, what happens when the road frontage has already been eaten up? Why would you make someone go back 300 feet when there is no road frontage to preserve? The coal farms is already there. So I I'm just really hoping I can go back and tell the group that they heard us, they're going to compromise, they're going to do something. I think a lot of the group just threw their hands up and said, it's a nice day, it's 80 degrees out, I'm not coming to the meeting. We've been to 4 public hearings, and they haven't changed the setback 1 foot. I would like to be able to go back to them and say, it's a different game now. We have a different council, they're hearing us, and they're willing to work with us. And I think if you're willing to work with the business people want to work with you. Your idea is good for us. It's good for the community. We like it. But why would you anger the business community by not compromising? Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Brad Pollard from Gray. Do I have to sign it?
Yes, please, thank you.
First of all, I've been attending some of the meetings here, and of course, I didn't realize that the discussion before this was about, having a new town manager, and I was very much aware of Rudy leaving. But I think this may be a good time we've got two candidates right here that if they listen to maybe what, and I believe you guys have good intentions in this ordinance on the self-storage. I can't say that, well, I can say it could be self-interest, because I have a building that I'm sitting on right now, going on 4 years. And it's not that, self-storage or climate-controlled storage could be one of those things that could go into that building. And there's other things too, and I'm very much aware of that. It was built for a restaurant, as a restaurant, and the restaurant business is just not that good. That no one's, breaking down the door to open up something. It's a different game, especially in that business. And actually was very fortunate enough to close the restaurant 5 weeks prior to COVID, which people thought I had a crystal ball on that. But in reality, I closed it because the formula for coal farms wasn't working. I had well over 100 employees, full and part-time. I hired a lot of youth. The youth has changed. Once in a while you'll find a gem, but that whole work ethic from a standpoint of how the restaurant ran over the years, whether mom and dad or Graham worked there or whoever worked there, there was always a connection. And back in the day, it was the job that you wanted, because you might have been raking blueberries or haying or pulling chickens, picking eggs, whatever it may be. So I had a challenge. I have the church there now. I have the challenge of trying to put something together and put something into that building. And I know Nate and I have discussed, and you have discussed with my son about having something there that is involved with the cannabis business. And I know that it's been well over a year now when we haven't seen anything concerning that. But this is self-interest with me, because, could I have got, a climate change type of situation into coal farms? It's a building that's about 20,000 square feet. I pay over $20,000 a year in taxes. I have for 3 years, close to almost 4 years since I closed the building. So it is important that I get something in there, and I'm very much aware of trying to put somebody in there that it works for the town. I'm not, I want something in there that I can be proud of, and I think other people too. So I know that this ordinance just takes out that opportunity for me in such a large space that I can't have something in a building that's already there that if you drove by it, you wouldn't know whether it was, a climate-controlled building or not, or if there was some sections in there that I could do storage. So, I just hope that, in the future, and the future is now with looking for a town manager, like I say, I heard these two candidates that were up here talking and about the citizens being involved maybe, and I'm not talking about the citizens having to hire. That's your job. That you guys were hired to do that, and but I think it's important for all the people in the community to kind of see what kind of direction are we going to go with the future of the town of Gray. I remember back in the day there was comments that older people than me back in the day would say, there'll be a day when you won't know, there won't be a difference between Portland and Lewiston, which are you know, Gray's really unique. We are in between the two largest cities, really, in the state of Maine, and is surrounded by so many others. And, you know, there are things in the town that does control a big portion of development, and of course, that has to do with sewerage. If you had sewerage in the town of Gray, I think you'd see a lot more development, and I'm very much aware of it. I have my own septic sewage plant. I had it for Coal Farms and for Spring Meadows. We still do. That's the only one in the town of Gray, actually. So I just hope that as we look for the future, whether it's this ordinance or ordinances that are coming down, that we hire somebody that is willing to not only facilitate the conversation, but help direct it with the council and with the citizens. And I think this is really important. I know this is either a first or a second reading on this, and I'm not in the storage building business. I know Scott is. I don't have a real big fish in this game, but it is important for me to see how I see ordinances that have been enacted in the town, and I've been involved with a few of them over the years, whether it was electronic signs back in the day when the bank had it, and that was it. And I helped write the rules on some of those electronic signs back 20 years ago, or even the drive-through. So I just hope we take this opportunity to maybe get some citizens involved in helping at least, you know, our input in what who our next town manager should be. Maybe someone, and I'm glad to hear that I think it was Dan that said, you know, someone local. I hate to see that we get somebody from Florida or Arizona or whatever to come in here. I mean, it's just a different animal, you know. Someone local, someone that knows the territory is certainly, I think, going to be very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi, Lonnie Humphrey from New Gloucester. I've ran a business in Gray for quite a few years, and, you know, I think if what Scotty's talking about, if we need to be, you know, team players, and if we need to come together, to do that, we need to work together. And we've been here at quite a few meetings, quite a few people, trying to get a compromise or work on different things. And I mean, some of you guys are quick to say that, well, we have compromised, the side setbacks have changed, or the back setbacks. Well, pretty much everybody sitting up there knows our concerns were the front setbacks, and it was the 300 feet off the roads, not really the side buffers and the back buffers. I own a few different properties around Gray, and I mean, if I wanted to build mini storage, it's just not conducive with 300-foot setbacks. And it's not really that I want to build mini storage, it's just the idea of that I have property, that I've owned it for years, that I've conducted business here in Gray for 46 years, whether it be the food business or the rental business or some contracting business. It's just the idea that, you know, you don't want to work with us, you don't want to give. I mean, going from 10 feet to 300 feet, nobody can really say exactly why. You know, if we're going to play ball together, it has to be a happy team. It can't be real extreme one way or the other. And that's just, you know, one of my concerns. I really have no thoughts on building mini storage or selling to anybody that wants to build mini storage. But my concerns are that you're taking rights away from us for our land and things that make our land have value and different things to do. And mini storage, really, I think makes a lot of sense for the town, for the tax base and the wear and tear on the town. They don't really take much to support them and stuff. And what we've seen over time or come into the town, I don't think there's a lot of developers here from Boston or from out of state that are trying to push through huge mini storage and do different things and take advantage of the town. I think it's a bunch of local business people and people that my father lived here, my grandparents live here, my kids live in the community, my kids work in the community. We're not really trying to railroad or take advantage of the community. We're just trying to keep our options open and keep them within reason so we can do things with our properties. And to go from 10 feet to 300 feet just is like, a mile away. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. The atmosphere and the money and the financial part will control what goes in to the front of the property, or the back of the property, or who wants to do what. And I mean, you guys can't really say that you can build your mini storage 300 feet out back because this is what we want out front. Well, if nobody's there with a check saying, we want to build this out front, I would like to buy your lot, I would like to work with you, or you should be building, a muffin shop or something like this. If it's not conducive, it just doesn't make any sense. If nobody's out there trying, I mean, we can be hopeful. My properties aren't adjacent to the town center or the corner. They're on Weymouth Road, they're on Ramsdale Road, they're not like it's gonna be in the quaint little gray district. And these rules you're trying to push through and setbacks are way in the outlying areas. And I just, as a businessman in Gray, and a family member of Gray in a lot of different directions, I just don't agree with how it's going, and I don't think you guys are hearing us out from talking to different planning board members, different members of the community, different things. I mean, there's a lot of people that say it doesn't make any sense. I don't see many people here saying 300 feet or 400 feet would even be better. You don't see anybody here saying that. You're saying, less, maybe 10 feet is not where it's at, but 300 feet is really ridiculous.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would anyone else like to comment? I don't see anyone online. Okay, I will close the public hearing on self-storage facility ordinance revisions at 7:57 PM. Looking for a motion for the Greytown Council to approve a, I guess we did the public hearing. Let me start again. Looking for a motion for the Greytown Council to approve a public hearing at the September 14th, 2023 Planning Board meeting and a second reading and public hearing at the Town Council meeting on September 19th, 2023 to review and approve proposed changes to the Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 402.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments from what we've heard this evening? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'll jump in. There's a lot there. I've lived in town 35 odd years now. I've heard about the business stigma that the town of Gray has for most of those years. I think it exists for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is because we self-perpetuate it. Because people find something that they don't like or they don't agree with, and it becomes just more proof that somebody's not listening to us, somebody's not agreeing with us, somebody's not incorporating all of our ideas into what we want to do. And sometimes that's true. But I also think that it is a bigger issue than just this particular ordinance. And I don't think for a minute, to be honest with you, coming to grips with this ordinance and making whatever changes people want to make to this ordinance is gonna change that. I would like to think it was that simple. But I think if we wanna change that, I think we have to all be willing to maybe look at things a little differently than we have in the past. Mr. Liberty said that, the property that we're hoping to preserve could easily be eaten up by residential properties, and I don't disagree with that at all. The council has a history of trying to pick places where the town is gonna develop, and it turns out, those ideas turn out not to work. One point in time, it was gonna be down by the plaza and out the Portland Road, and we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars putting a water main out there that would support those businesses, and nothing materialized there. Another time, the council thought that it would be Route 202 out towards Wyndham, headed that way. And there has been some development there, but it certainly hasn't created any kind of nucleus that other development has been built on. We have the comp plan, which overwhelming number of people in town supported, that draws new areas for residential and for commercial development. And personally, again, these are my own thoughts, there's no guarantee that those ideas necessarily are gonna work either. Ultimately, what's gonna work is when we build a coalition of people who are gonna be willing to pitch in, whether they get their way or not. I think anybody who pays any attention to the council proceedings knows that none of us always get what we want when we do these ordinances. That's just a fact of life. None of us get what we want when we do a budget. You can come down on a single issue and say, this is make or break for me. This is gonna be the thing that is either gonna allow me to agree to work with you, or it's gonna be the thing that's just gonna make me continue to perpetuate the idea that Gray is not business friendly. There's gonna be a lot more of this stuff. We've spent a huge amount of time on this. It's amazing the amount of time that we've spent on this ordinance, which means we haven't done other things. We haven't done anything about residences eating up the commercial properties that we have. My goal being on the council is just to do what I've heard several of you ask for, which is to try and put the fewest number of constraints on anybody's property. I mean, our property, for the most part, is the most valuable thing that most of us own. And certainly my house is my most valuable possession. If somebody does something next to my house that causes the value of that to go down, that doesn't help me at all. But we can't be a monoculture of business, whether it's gas stations or self-storage. I've heard several people tonight say that they don't have any plans on building self-storage, but they're adamant that this ordinance has a big negative impact on them. I understand the bit about the building usage and reusing other properties. But I don't know, to be honest with you, how we're going to get to the point where we do get rid of the stigma that we have. I do know that the difference between there's a difference between hearing somebody and listening to somebody and agreeing with them. Those are two different things. And I think a lot of people, because they don't hear the agreeing part, they assume that the listening part hasn't happened. And that's not always the case. So I don't know where this is gonna shake out. The sewer is an interesting idea. I've been trying for several years now to get us to think about sewer. Eventually, we're gonna grow as a community to the point where we're gonna come under the federal Clean Water and Stormwater Acts, and those will impose upon us a whole new set of requirements that we're not really, to be honest with you, in a position now to afford. So building out the infrastructure so that we can attract businesses, it is, I think, important to the future of the town. The same goes with stormwater. I've been on the council for 6 years now, and I've been amazed at the amount of time we have spent just trying to repair what we own. I mean, I don't like paying taxes more than anyone else. But I do understand that if we don't take care of what we have, it's only going to make it more expensive for my kids if they choose to live in this town. And I think over the last 6 years, with a lot of community support, we have made a lot of headway. We've done a lot of good things to try and bring the infrastructure back up. There's a bond in this year's budget to replace the 50-plus-year-old septic system out behind me here in the field. So I don't know ultimately what the answer is gonna be along this, around this. But I think we do have, I agree with you 100%, we do have to find a way to eliminate that stigma, and all of us find a way to continue working together as a group for the benefit of the town, whether we win one or we don't. So those are my thoughts right now.
Thanks, Dan. Any other counselors have comments or thoughts?
I'll just note that being back on the council after a year off, a lot of the public hearings and stuff took place during my year off. So I'm still trying to come up to speed on this history. I mean, you know, I think I'm interested in continuing to try to preserve the road frontage for commercial businesses. And I think that was a reasonable, you know, decision on the council's part. So, and I have heard that there have been quite a number of concessions made. But again, I mean, obviously I haven't gone back and listened to all the public hearings that have taken place so far. And you know, when we started this process, was when I was on the council before, and we were kind of fresher off the comp plan discussions, the many discussions that we had, and really got a strong feeling from the population that they were looking to move the town in a different direction, and that was really the impetus behind, in part, this ordinance, is this feeling like the potential existed for there to be self-storage units, you know, scattered like throughout the community that would become the self-storage unit capital of Southern Maine or something like that. And I think that was part of the worry. Since then, it sounds like the market has crashed a bit in the self-storage realm. So perhaps, you know, in the short term at least, we wouldn't be, you know, experiencing that. But I think, you know, my sense was that we had a strong statement from the community that that's not what they wanted. So, you know, we're struggling with this. You know, nobody wants to take value away from people, but that is the nature of land ordinances, is, you know, in some measure, is controlling what can get built there. So I'm still, you know, speaking for myself, I mean, and I think really for the whole council, I mean, we have been listening. We're trying to balance the statements that we get from the community with your needs as well. And so, you know, we'll just keep listening.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, I would just also like to add that while elements of this amended ordinance for self-storage facilities was reactionary to some market pressures that we saw, that Ann was indicating about a year ago, it's just one in a series of changes we're going to have to make for our ordinances to come into alignment with the direction we received from the comprehensive plan. I think the intent with this ordinance and probably future ordinances is to make these changes to the best of our ability to align with the comprehensive plan, which is what the goal of this was. And while this is only applicable in one district right now, we were trying to write this ordinance with looking forward and assuming that we would expand where these could be built in the future. And we wanted to have in place an ordinance that reflected design standards and left open road frontage for the types of development we'd like to see closer to the village. So I hear your point that right now these feel like an outlier because this is not specifically applicable to land in the village center, but we might be adding those districts later, and we're just trying to write our ordinances now so that we don't have to return to them later because they would be misaligned with the comprehensive plan. Marty, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
Okay.
Can I just make one more
Yeah.
point? And I mean, time is a limited, money is limited, capital is limited, so is time. And when the vote didn't pass in June, this council spent 4 or 5 meetings, discussing how to reduce it and what would be the best budget to bring back to the voters. That's time that we weren't able to spend working on ordinances and other stuff. So, I mean, that's just a reality. I really do hope that we pass the budget on Saturday, because if not, then we're just gonna have to, spend more time working out budget details instead of doing this other work that we all really want to get to.
Does anyone want to hear from Doug about the changes that have been made since we talked about this last? Or are we confident with what we've read in the packet?
It might be good just to make it part of the record.
Okay, yeah. Doug, would you mind coming up?
And we don't need me any further.
No.
I don't think so. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Garrett.
Thank you.
Good night.
Doug Webster, Planning Director. So just a couple quick responses. I would respectfully echo the point that the chair just made, that in most of the ordinance work that we're doing is intended to be plug and play, if you will, per the expression, and understood that this is only in the light manufacturing overlay district now, but the I'm not going to be setting policy, that's the council's job, but one of the forthcoming recommendations with the new zoning is to explore and likely propose that self-storage units might be able to be in backland, maybe even in residential districts. So the objective of the standards is to get them completed, and we will explore different locations throughout town as an integral part of the new zoning. So I wanted to point that out. There are reduced setbacks in response to the input that we received. And it's in section F, it's on council packet page 32 and 33. In some cases, for densely developed areas, the setbacks, instead of the big perimeter buffer, can go down to 50-foot perimeter buffer, can go down to 15 feet. I understand about the 300. I don't, that's either you're on board or you're not. And the intention is to try to preserve, as we've talked about, the usability of that front section for other commercial uses. I don't know what to say about that. I understand the objections. As I often say, I'm a soldier with a lot of generals. So the changes, the intention throughout, a couple examples, council packet page 27. In some instances, there are more rigid requirements, and then in other sections, the intention was to leave some latitude up to the reviewing authority, in most cases the planning board. Under applicability, I'm on council packet page 27. If you have a new self-storage facility, you're required to comply with these standards, including the design standards. With an expansion or repairs or replacement, this is B2 and 3. The language that's used is practically achievable. That was done on purpose. Another really quick example is in building requirements. This is D on page 29, council packet page 29. There are standards that are rigid, and then there's guidance that's provided depending on the specifics. This is the example I was looking for right here. On council packet, page 32, 10A says, these are the standards, in no case less than 25 feet, except as permitted in 10B, which allows you to go down 15 feet. And then 10B says there are principles. So that was done intentionally to say, okay, here are the minimums, but we're going to leave it up to the reviewing authority together with some guidance to look at reducing the setbacks even further. So that, in large part, were the changes. And since the...
Yep. Doug, just one sec. Ann?
Sure.
I just had a question.
Sure.
In a couple places, the date of March 1st, 2023 is identified. I think the first place may be on page 27 under applicability. And I just wanted to make sure that, clarify that that's still the date we're going, even though we're well past March 1st, 2023, we're going to backdate it?
We could, it probably makes sense to leave it, that was the date that was put in because of the, it's after, but the date that the moratorium was put in effect.
Okay.
The objective was to ensure, there were two projects, as Mr. Liberty is aware, there were two projects that were approved by the planning board prior to the council adopting the moratorium. Mr. Liberty's was one, and then there was another project on Portland Road, and that comes in again on applicability. I'm on council packet page 27, B1.
Right.
And that's why that's echoed there, to be clear that the projects that were previously approved before the moratorium went into effect were locked into their approval.
Okay.
Is that when they're, because our moratorium is older than March 1st, 2023, so was it, I feel like it was March 1st, 2022, doesn't that?
I'll check on that, but
Okay.
the intention was to ensure.
I know what you're saying, that we allowed those two projects to go through before the moratorium was enacted, but I believe the moratorium's older than March 1st, 2023.
And because of the, as you're aware, because of the moratorium, there hasn't been the ability to have new
Right.
Self-storage facilities, but I'll check on that date.
I might be that might be the date of the last time we extended it. I can't recall exactly, but.
But I think that was memory serves me, I believe that was the date that we originally anticipated that these standards would become effective.
Okay.
But then it got, based on the input,
Yeah.
understandably, the first reading got pushed back, so.
Okay. Okay,
So-
all right, thank you. Could you continue with the changes you were outlining?
Yeah, that's really, those are really the highlights.
Okay.
Was to try to give latitude to the reviewing authority, the planning board, but be clear with what the minimum standards were. We combined together in one spot, in accordance with council input, all of the outdoor storage standards, tried to get as many of those as we could. And we also tried to be very clear with the lot frontage development standards. This was also in response to input from the council. If there's going to be a building on the front, and this is perhaps foreshadowing what may happen with the future commercial districts, where it says, as an example, the parking needs to be located behind the building.
Mm-hmm.
That was in direct response to the council input. We wanted to be clear with the standards for the development. And the only other piece that's significant is, again, based on the council input, to try to make sure that if you have one parcel on a road, to make sure that, that's not right, because the parking has to be behind, to make sure that that they can be separated. If you have self-storage back here, there are standards echoed in the provisions here. Here's the parking back here. To make, so if it goes to the planning board as one parcel, you have the development on the front and the development in the back. There's several references to ensure that there's enough separation between the buildings at a minimum to allow this to be separated, so that the front portion could be sold separately from the back. So, I believe there was, there was council support for that.
Yep.
So that you can have two different uses on the property, but you could separate them in the future, and there was enough separation there.
Yes, that was,
So,
that's correct.
so those are the highlights.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Did anyone have any comments or questions for Doug on the changes?
I guess I have another question about the gates on the access road to the back lot, and I just was curious, kind of what, this is maybe a council discussion, but just sort of what the thinking was on the gate. Because how do people get through the gate if they need to access the self-storage?
This is under the general standards, I would assume?
Yeah, I think so. Let me find where it's at.
The gate was discussed on point. I remember the council discussion, the consensus of the council is that it should be gated based on self-storage facilities that I've seen. You either have an access code, or I don't know, in this day and age, maybe use a card. Like,
Okay, yeah, so yeah, it was on page 30, packet page 30, number 7, was all self-storage facilities shall be gated with security provisions sufficient to ensure access to the site only by patrons, owners, and those persons needed access for operations or maintenance. I hadn't noticed I hadn't noticed self-storage facilities that have that.
And that was a council discussion several months ago at this point. The policy question on the table at the point, at that point in time, was whether or not that would be self-regulated, if you will, by the owner or the operator of the facility, or if it's something that the town should require. The consensus of the council at the time was that it should be required, and perhaps partly because many facilities operate that way.
Yep.
I think I'm remembering that correctly. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember it coming up on point.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of conversation around it being a security issue and ensuring access to only those who should be accessing the self-storage units. Okay. And any other thoughts, or should we move to a vote? Okay, so we're gonna vote on, as I mentioned, on moving this forward for a planning board hearing and also a second reading and public hearing back here at the council on September 19th. Marty?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Thank everyone, I want to thank everyone for coming out and engaging in this process. Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Good night.
Okay. Moving on to action items. Looking for a motion to review and act upon approving the appointment of Lawrence Zuckerman as a regular member of the Ordinance Advisory Committee with a term expiring on August 31st, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank Larry. He's a current member of the Ordinance Advisory Committee, OAC. He certainly contributes a lot of valuable thoughts and opinions, and I'm glad that he is rejoining the committee.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Marty?
Yeah, it's-
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I was on OAC with Larry too, and he does bring a wealth of
Yeah, he does.
experience and knowledge of the job, so, having him there is a great thing for the town.
For sure. Marty?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Anne?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay. Next up is to review and act upon approving an extension of the property tax deadline to October 16th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so our original due date was October 2nd, 2023, which is typical of property tax bills in years past. Since the June budget referendum failed to pass, and we are having the town meeting to discuss revisions to and passing of the budget on September 9th, the due date of October 2nd would not leave individuals enough time to receive their bills and pay them with at least 30 days' notice. So this extension, pending the approval of the town budget on the 9th, would allow for bills to go out and people to pay them with at least 30 days' notice. Does anyone have any comments? Dan?
Question for Nate. How much of a pickle does this put us in as far as cash flow is concerned for the town?
I don't think it's a huge strain, but it's an important factor.
Is it, I guess my only concern is that this date is too soon.
I had that thought also.
You know, this is less than a month after the meeting. And I didn't know if it was problematic that we gave people till October 27th, if that's a showstopper or not. I don't want to
Well,
create problems.
it's more than a month after the meeting, and I think in Lauren and her memos.
Not a month after they receive the bills won't go out until the week of the 18th. And if they take 4 or 5 days, they won't get there until the 22nd.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
that was kind of everyone knows our taxes are due, but depending on what happens Saturday, they could be increased.
I mean, a lot of people pay their property taxes through escrow, which is managed,
Yep.
by their mortgage holder. So I don't know how that works exactly with notifying those companies and whether they would amend their date.
They probably will pay it when they get the bill. I mean,
Right,
that's,
exactly.
It's the folks that
Yeah.
that don't do that or have to figure out how to deal with the increase if there is an
Right.
increase in the end.
I mean, to your point about cash flow, if we extend it to the end of October, we're reliant on any funds we've taken in since April of this year to pay our bills essentially. So, I don't know.
Well, we're putting an outer edge on when it has to be paid by. People will probably start paying them as soon as they receive their bills, but, again, I don't want to create a problem, but I just thought that if it wouldn't create a problem, that extending it might be a good thing.
What was Lauren's thought on picking October 16th? Do you know? Is there,
I don't
is that
know
date
that there
special?
was, no, I don't know that there was much behind it, other than it was just 2 weeks back. To try to ostensibly, the idea being the town meeting would be this weekend. Once she's got the figures back from the town meeting next Monday, she could finalize the commitment and print the tax bills. So I think she was projecting 30 days from the time it would take for her to get the tax bills printed.
I mean, having a due date of, so 2 weeks from October 16th is October 30th, which is also a Monday. It's also towards the very end of the month. Maybe that would make more sense for a due date. I don't know. I also want to give people enough time to receive notice and pay their bill and come to town hall to do so if that's how they choose to pay it. And also, a lot of people mail their bills in, and that takes a little longer.
Well, since we're not in a position to ask Lauren, perhaps we could just amend the motion to say that we would like to postpone it to the 27th or the 30th, but that we're happy to let Lauren and Justine have the final say as to whether or not that will create a financial difficulty for the town.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to give them that latitude.
Yeah, how would we amend the wording on that, Nate? Amend the motion to,
Give direction to staff to move the to change the property tax deadline from October 2nd to no later than X date.
I mean, you can make it the 30th if you want.
And I think that's all you really need.
Yeah. And if they, you know, like I said, if they feel the need to do it sooner,
No
but they're in the
later.
position to know.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Do we want to say no later than the 27th, which is a Friday, or the 30th, which is a Monday in exactly 2 weeks, or four
2
week,
more weeks.
4 weeks after the
I'd say
second?
the 30th.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, I think,
the 27th to the 30th
Yeah.
isn't gonna matter.
Yeah,
The town hall will
right,
be
exactly.
closed for,
Yeah,
Push it
those
up
2 days,
4
so.
weeks, exactly.
yeah.
yeah, I like that. It's kind of symmetrical.
Okay, that makes good sense.
10/30, October 30th. Okay, so we will be amending the motion to read, to review and act upon approving an extension of the property, to review and act upon giving direction to staff to approve an extension of the property tax deadline from October 2nd to no later than October 30th.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you made that motion, Marty, you seconded. Are you
Yes.
both
Yeah.
comfortable
I'm
with that?
good with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. Marty,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Ann,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Okay. Next up is to review and act upon authorizing the town manager to renegotiate agreements for line striping because the original bidder was unable to complete the work in a timely manner. Do I have a motion?
so moved.
I'll
Second.
Oh,
Okay, so we have a memo, or it's not really a memo, it's an email exchange, from Tim Estes, our interim, Public Works Director, advising us that the previous company we had enlisted for line striping, K5 Corporation of Massachusetts, who we did not actually have a contract with, had yet to do the line striping in town, and that they couldn't give us a firm date for being available. Tim was able to engage Lucas Striping of Reedfield, Maine, to do the work sooner, and at a cost that was less, so.
$6,000 less.
Yes, so, and I don't know if any of you have driven around town, but it looks like much of the work has
Yeah,
been
it
done,
is.
and it
Yes.
is much,
Done today.
much safer driving on the roads, both
Mhm.
during the day and at night. So we are just kind of retroactively, giving the authority to pay this bill, which is actually lower than our budgeted amount, so. That's the background there. Did anyone have any thoughts or comments aside from that?
Nope, it's pretty clear.
Okay. Ann,
yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Marty?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay. Next up is to review and act upon approving an interim town manager. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
So, thank you, Josh, for sticking around, and we also heard from Mr. Garish offering his services through Eaton Peabody. Just a question for folks. Some of our conversation might involve personnel issues, since Josh has put his hat in the ring. Do we want, I think we have an option of stepping into executive session if we would like to amend the agenda. Do we feel we need to do that, or can we have a conversation about this without getting into the weeds of the personnel?
I
Stuff.
think there's that, and then also the possibility, I think, of tabling it until our next meeting.
We could do that. I think we had some urgency around having someone at the table before the town meeting on Saturday.
Yeah.
but-
Yes, I was gonna bring that up.
Right.
To be honest with you, I think the thing that the way I'm leaning is that I would like to select Josh, but I also think there may be some advantage to sort of a hybrid model where Don has a lot of experience. And I don't know if he'd even be willing to do that, but perhaps, 1 day a week, he's available for Josh. And it would also give him the opportunity, as he said, being the interim does put him in a position to learn more about the departments and more about the work of the town. So I
You're
don't-
talking about Mr. Garish and his search.
Yes, well,
Informing
I-
his search for,
Yes,
if
it
we
would
were to
inform,
hire him.
right, it would inform his search. I mean, I think on, so that's, I don't know if that appeals to anybody else, but that was just something I thought of while I was listening to them both talk.
I mean, I agree with you. I think Josh would certainly be qualified, and he could step into the role with a knowledge and history of the town and the
Oh,
people
yeah.
here. I think, I hear what you're saying about Mr. Garish, and maybe giving him the opportunity to serve here once a week would inform his process if we were to hire him in a search firm capacity. But I think he could still be informed enough through Josh's input and any other input he's gathering elsewhere personally. And it does also sound like not just Josh, but other members of staff are willing to step up in an interim capacity to cover the services we need. And we've expanded staff at the library, it sounds like, with a very well-qualified candidate who could fill in.
The other reason why I was thinking, and there's actually nothing that prevents us from doing both, I'd like to hear from Josh actually on that idea, but, you know, Mr. Garris has connections beyond the town that, you know, none of us have. And those, I think, are the value of considering hiring him to do the search. We are also looking for an auditor, and it's not lost on me that if anyone can find us an auditor, he's probably a more likely source than anybody else we have right now.
That's a good
So,
point.
you know, again, we haven't spoken to him, so I don't know if he would even entertain that, but.
The 1 day a week scenario?
Yeah, but there's nothing that precludes us from appointing Josh tonight and inquiring about that. I think we should, well, and I guess the other question for me is, should we ask John to put out an RPF for
The search firm?
the search and then see what we get back in
I
the
mean,
next 2 weeks?
The feedback I've heard both from John and Alyssa and Nate in regards to the search firm is that they're really just similar to our auditor and every other professional service we've been trying to enlist lately. There's just nobody who has capacity to do the work. That's my understanding. There's I think, either 3 to 5 other towns currently searching for the town manager right now. Yeah, so and also I noted that I think the last time we engaged Eaton Peabody, their fee was $7,500, and it still is
Yeah,
$7,500.
I'm not worried about the cost at
Yeah,
all.
a few years later, we were anticipating having to spend more, so,
I think Nate's point, though, around the fiscal policy and following the fiscal policy and you know, if we do an RFP and 2 weeks from now, we're talking to Mr. Garish because we haven't received anything, we've done our due diligence, and it's not gonna be, I don't think, a great expense or hardship, correct me if I'm wrong, for John to send out an RFP.
No hardship, it just depends on your timeline.
yeah, would 2 weeks be enough to really allow for responses?
It would
to
be,
an
it would be enough to allow for somebody to tell us that they're interested and would like to put a proposal in.
Are you suggesting that you would have proposals back in time for your next meeting?
Yeah, that's what Dan was saying.
That would give you a deadline of next Wednesday,
And we haven't even put it out yet. It's
And
already
not put it out
Wednesday
yet.
tomorrow. Yeah.
so you'd be looking at your October meeting rather than your second September meeting.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I am not in favor of putting this off. I think we should make a decision tonight. And I think the world of Josh. I think he's done a terrific job for us. I'm worried about asking people, at a time when everybody's already feeling stretched, asking him to step into the interim town manager position, although, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that he would do a great job. But I also think that we have somebody who had, 38 years as a town manager, really knows the job backwards and forwards, and told us pretty clearly that he wanted to link both the search and the interim town manager So I mean, we could certainly ask him, but I think my preference is just to go with Don at this point, sole source it. I mean, we're in an extraordinary hiring environment, and where our town manager is leaving, and we have some important decisions to be made. And I think, for example, Don has, more experience dealing with MDOT, and we have those kind of negotiations coming up. That's kind of my thinking about it. I think that we should make a decision tonight and hire, on both the interim and the search, and go with Don.
So Don indicated that he was not interested in serving as interim manager unless we enlist him with the search also. But we were just discussing voting on the search at the September 19th meeting, and potentially inquiring about other search firms. And also, it's not on our agenda tonight, so we would need to amend the agenda to add a vote for the search firm if we appoint Don tonight, we also need to be making a decision on the search firm,
Yeah, I
because
agree.
he won't do one without the other.
Just to be extremely clear about that, he's willing to do your search if he's not town manager, but he's
Yes.
not willing to be your town manager if he's not also doing the search.
Correct.
Right,
Right, just
Right.
want to make sure that
Yeah,
was
thank you
clear on
for-
the record.
That makes it easy, doesn't it?
Marty, what are your thoughts on interim manager?
I go with Josh. He's homegrown, so to speak.
Okay.
He knows the lay of the land.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Anne, and I don't disagree with you in that it would be good to have Don in the room for our conversations with the DOT and the things the council is trying to hash through. But I really think Josh could get the ground running with just, with our continuing to function with our government, because he has relationships here, and, not just with the employees, but also the residents of the town. Mr. Garish is sort of an unknown entity to a lot of people. There's already a lot of transition going on, so I don't know, I think I would be in favor of moving forward with Josh as interim manager, and then engaging with Mr. Garish as much as possible on both the search and getting his input on other things, potentially an auditor, other things if he's willing to do that. Perhaps that would be the 1 day per week scenario that Dan proposed.
Yeah, I'd be, if everybody doesn't mind, I'd be curious to hear from Josh as to
Yeah,
what he thinks of that.
I would agree. Yeah, Josh, would you like to come up?
Thank you, forgive me, this is very weird for everyone.
Yes, yeah.
If I do see the wisdom in bringing him in for a day of the week, so long as the responsibilities were clear, the last thing I want to do is have a mommy and daddy situation. If you
Yeah,
want the
no.
answer from mommy,
Yeah.
go to daddy and he'll give you something different. So that would,
Yeah.
it would be a train wreck very quickly. So if they felt that Don and I were on a different page as far as coming to us for various things, so they're coming to him for some and me for others, that would not work. But I think if there was an advisory capacity or an as needed for certain things, like, yeah, if I'm in the room in MDOT, I am out of my league, and if I did have some help for that, that would be appreciated. So if there could be some kind of arrangement where it would be advisory meant however that would be, just to
Yes.
kind of backstop. So if I do have some resource that is familiar with the town, engaged in the process, and then also I can go to
Yeah.
just as a, hey, I've never done this before, I don't understand how this process goes, I think that'd be a tremendous benefit to me.
I think to some extent, the idea appeals to me for exactly what you said. I think everyone is got a lot on their plate. And
Yeah,
if we can provide you with some backup and a resource, I think it could well be, worth it. And again, this is all pie in the sky, because we haven't talked to Mr. Garish. He-
right.
Who knows if he.
I know. Yeah, Anne, go ahead.
The other thing I would just note, and this is more to protect Josh, I understand that people have approached you, people on staff have approached you and asked, suggested that you step up as interim, and I that's a real testament to your style and your ability to work with people. But I also just know from my past experiences of being elevated from one position to another within the same organization, and it can be really awkward. And it's it's different because it's interim and not permanent, so maybe that's not as much of a consideration, but.
Definitely, I am playing up the interim. That is definitely a strength as to this position in that I'm not really looking to implement any huge new concepts, ideas. I'm
Right.
not looking to start out on any grand plans. I
Right.
just truly want to keep the wheels running and keep it in its best condition until the next person gets along.
Yeah,
So in a way, I think that is honestly, in a way, somewhat as a benefit to my position where because I may be in a little bit out of the depths that I'm used to swimming in, then I'm not gonna make these big bold moves to say I'm gonna redo everything in 5 months. So I think that that might be a benefit to my candidacy in the fact if I just do want to make sure that the town as is functioning is as best as it can
Keep
possibly
the
be at
plates
this time.
running. Nate?
And you had indicated that you know, you wanted this process done in a couple of months, and you have some vacation time upcoming, you know, planned, and those seem like definitely things you ought to be doing. And so I don't want to take that away from you. So I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Yeah, this was a lot of thought and a lot of gut check for me, and this is not something I would enter into lightly. I very much realize that this is a very important position at a very important time. And as I'm standing here before you, I say I am ready and willing to do this, if I am so selected and chosen.
thank you, Josh.
Thank you. I'll be back here if need be.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I really see the interim role as kind of what Josh was indicating, in that it's someone to kind of keep the house in order, keep the wheels spinning, keep us functioning on a daily basis. It's less assisting with policy development and engaging in that. The council, I think, really should bear the weight of that in the interim capacity. And, I mean, we can check in with Mr. Garish about whether or not he'd be willing to serve in an advisory role. If he won't, I'm still comfortable with Josh taking the reins, and I think we can all kind of bear some of the weight and help during this process also.
Yes.
So. Nate, did you have any thoughts as outgoing town manager?
I don't, other than I'm glad that Josh made the point about making it sure that it's not more confusing having 2 town managers than 1.
Yeah, I don't think we'd be hiring Mr. Garish as a town manager
No.
if we were to do that.
No.
It would be solely as an advisory role,
Mm-hmm.
just support for Josh if he needs it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what his fee structure would look like for that. I think his
Assume it would be the same.
daily rate
fee.
was $750 per day. I think that's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
That's what we wrote down.
7 or 7.
700, sorry, 700 per day plus
Yep.
other mileage expenses. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear if there's any difference in his fee structure, if he's willing to do that at all. Okay, so do we feel comfortable voting tonight or
I do.
on
Yeah.
interim? Yeah,
I think we should move ahead.
okay. Marty? Oh, wait, actually, we need to amend,
Yes, you need
are
to
we
put a
in
name in.
majority with appointing Josh Tiffany?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm for it.
Okay. So we will be amending the motion that the Gray Town Council appoints Josh Tiffany as interim town manager effective Friday, September 8th. And Ann, you made the motion, and Marty, you seconded. We're
Yeah,
not-
I think I'm not comfortable with this plan, so I guess I'll go ahead, and just vote against it, yeah. I'm comfortable with the change to the motion.
Okay, you're comfortable with the change to the motion, okay,
Yeah.
but that's not your vote, I understand. Okay, Marty,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes,
Ann?
No.
I am a yes. And again, I want to just thank you, Josh, for stepping up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also Kyle and Darcel and others at the library for filling in for your very big shoes.
yes,
Yeah, all right,
please do.
you can do that.
Yes.
All right,
Good night.
Thanks.
good night. So I'm just making a note. Okay, next up is report from the council chair. I don't really have a lot to discuss beyond what we've already discussed tonight. We've been meeting with council, our town council, excuse me, our lawyer to talk about the process for the town meeting. We have that in place, and I just want to encourage everybody to attend on September 9th at 9:30 to make sure we all have representative of voting at the town meeting for the revisions to the FY24 budget. We did, Ann and I, Nate and Doug, did meet with our state legislative representatives, Teresa Purse, it's Purse, right? Teresa Purse and Annie Graham, to talk about the RAISE grant application we will be applying for to support our infrastructure development on Yarmouth Road and Main Street. And then we also discussed legislation that might help us work through the conflicts we have with LD1 in our budget every year. They sound like they are certainly willing to help us through both of those things. They're going to be in touch with representatives from the DOT to get our conversation moving forward. And they were discussing potentially proposing legislation for the January legislative session that's coming up to address LD1. That's all I have from perspective of council chair. Nate, did you have anything for town manager?
Just
Reporting?
a couple of notes, thank you. I wanted to reiterate and maybe clarify that today I met with Kyle Hidiniak and Josh Tiffany to discuss promoting Kyle to the Interim Director of Communications and Information Technology. I'm going to distribute the stipend benefit and also the responsibilities heavily toward Kyle, and Josh will be continuing to provide background support as Kyle acclimates to the role. I'm very excited about this change for Kyle, who's shown a great deal of enthusiasm and motivation for the role, and also for Josh, who, if he's not being town manager, interim town manager, will definitely want to go back to his quieter life in the library. So congratulations to both of them. This is a conversation I've been having with Josh for a little while, and I'm glad to put it into motion. Also wanted to note again, although I did bold it at the bottom of my memo, that the town hall offices will resume standard office hours this Thursday, starting at 8:30 in the morning. And I understand there's been, a great deal of conversation about that decision. It was the right thing to do at the time. It provided staff with an opportunity to start some skills training on interdepartmental communication using the town's technology that I think was very valuable and well received. And I will sort of leave it to you and the incoming town manager to look for ways to provide those training opportunities, very needed and valuable training opportunities to town staff around team skills, management and leadership on projects in some other fashion in the future. And I'll just thank you all for the opportunity to serve the town of Gray. I look back at the last 2.5 years, and I see how much change has occurred, how much progress we've made. Some of that change is still in a transitional place, and I just hope you all will see those changes through. It was what you asked me to do, and I've done my best to implement that. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Nate. Okay, next up is committee reports. Marty, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Blueberry Committee will meet for the last time this year on September 26th at 6 p.m. with the final report coming in October. Blueberry will also meet with the fire chief Thursday of this week at a time to be determined on with the issue of safety. Planning Committee meets September 14th, workshop at 6 p.m., meeting at 7 p.m. Finance Committee meets September 21st at 4 p.m., and we could use an extra member or two. Zoning Board meets September 27th at 7 p.m. Community Day Committee will probably not, not meet again till next spring, and the staff committee, no meetings are set, and that's my report.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Dan?
Marty already covered the planning board meeting. I don't have any others to report.
Ann?
Open Space meets next week on its new standing meeting date of the second Wednesday of the month, and none of my other committees have met. They don't currently have enough members to have a quorum. Though I've heard that Resiliency may have some new members willing to apply. We just haven't seen their applications yet.
Thank you. The Ordinance Advisory Committee is scheduled to meet again we're most likely meeting again September 13th, pending the confirmation from members of their availability. And then today, GPCOG Executive Committee resumed for the year. We met in Yarmouth at their town library for an executive committee retreat, where we went over the strategic priorities for the organization and also the executive director. There's a lot of focus not only on their regional efforts around housing and community resilience planning for sustainability. Those are continuing to be a focus, but GPCOG has gotten a lot of feedback in the last year, especially from their member communities outside the metro region, that we would like to engage kind of in sub-regional capacities. So they're continuing with that work. They've had some success in the Lakes region with Bridgeton, Naples, Casco, Raymond, or excuse me, not Raymond, Sebago. And then I still haven't replied, but they're going to be convening kind of what they're referring to as a Greater Gray sub-regional committee here in October, and Dan and I had volunteered to go to that, so we'll be following up on that. And then they're also coming up with plans to better communicate GPCOG's value to all their member communities, including, frankly, the larger ones who are having a harder time advocating for the expense. South Portland, the last 2 years, has almost voted to leave the organization. Luckily, there's been enough input from both the executive committee and some of their council members to express the value GPCOG has and that they have retained their membership. But I think it was just a red flag for GPCOG that they needed to do a little bit more proactive outreach in communities to just have people really understand what their services are and how best to utilize them. So they're going to be doing a lot of outreach with that more proactively in the coming year.
What's the date of that meeting, Krista?
I can't, it was October, I want to say October 16th, but I don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
I will reply and CC you though.
thank you.
And then at the meeting, I also mentioned that we were having a lot of shifting priorities here in Gray. Our town budget didn't pass, and Nate's leaving, and Christina did mention just to reach out if we found that we needed GPCOG's input or assistance on anything. So I appreciated that. We should keep that in mind if we do run into things with the DOT or other issues. They are a resource we could utilize.
Maybe they'd like to create an auditing service.
Maybe they can be auditors.
For smaller.
Right. Yeah, so I think just in this transitional period, we should really try to think about all the things we have at our fingertips, not just what we use typically. Like we have other resources out there. There's MMA, there's GPCOG, there's, other grant opportunities we might utilize. So just, we should be open to those and try to think outside the box as things move forward. That's all I have for committee reports. Next up is council correspondence and activities. Marty, do you want to start out?
Yeah, I received an anonymous text from a neighbor, supposedly neighbor, who was claimed to be a voter and taxpayer, asking me something about the meeting on Saturday, and I couldn't pry a name out of him, so that's all I have.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, before I start, I just want to say, I want to thank Nate for all his effort on our behalf. I think that it's been hopefully it's been a positive experience for Nate. It's been a positive experience, I think, for the town. I think one of the things that's been good about it is we have, I think, modeled the fact that we don't always have to agree on all of the issues in order to get the town's business done and to move the ball down the field. And I think that's, it's an important lesson, and it seems to be a dying art if you pay any attention to the news. So I really do appreciate his efforts on behalf of the town, and I wish him all the best in Bolivia or wherever you end up.
Did you have any correspondence or activities?
Oh,
you
yeah,
wanted to-
sorry, thank
That's
you for
okay.
getting me back on track.
That's okay.
I did meet with Nate, Britt Barton, our clerk, Natalie Burns, our counsel, about the town meeting, and we went over that earlier tonight. Also attended a meeting with James Estabrook from the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office. Chief Elkinek, Nate, and myself were there. And to talk about the weight limits and enforcing the weight limits. We, communicated to them that our goal was really education and not to start handing out fines. We really want to change people's habits and behavior. He did provide us with a sample of a ticket, actually, for ordinance violations that Raymond has, and I shared that with everybody in my email. I think at some point in time, it would be good for us to comb through our ordinances and find out all of the ones that we have attached fines to, and just step back and take a look at that, and they've all been developed individually and on their own, and I think we might want to take a look at them and see if that's really, if we've got in place what we really have in place. The nice thing about the tickets is you can decide how much effort you're gonna put into collecting, but it would provide us with some data as to what they're doing out in the world and what, at least from that vantage point, what we're seeing for violations. So I think that could be valuable that way.
Just a question. Did you get the sense from them that they would be willing to enforce the ordinance we have in place once our ticketing system is?
They will
here?
enforce it, but they will not follow through. So they're not gonna collect the money or do any of the legal issues that would be, accompanied by that. I offered to make a sort of a one-page handout that showed the truck routes and the roads that were weight limited, and put the sort of salient details from the ordinance in there that they could in turn just hand out to drivers if they stop people. And he liked that idea, so that's on my to-do list. There was one other thing that I was gonna say, but
Sorry, I
no,
interrupted
that's
you with
okay.
my question.
So that was pretty much the extent of that meeting. They have their own electronic signs,
Oh,
which
okay.
they're going to look into loaning us one so that we can
Yeah, that'd be great.
put something like across from the cemetery or wherever, point trucks, sort of in the right direction. I also learned from Tim, Estes, our Public Works Director, that there are signs up that quite frankly, I drove right by and didn't see, so I'm also gonna put the location of the signs on this map. And that was pretty much the extent of that. The other meeting I attended was the department heads meeting where Nate announced his departure. And I communicated that to all of you and, basically explained to them that we're looking sort of to be steady as we go. And that the goal was to hire an interim town manager. And the department heads were curious as to whether, we would want their input in the process, and I passed along that we definitely would. So I think that, it felt fairly positive anyways, that meeting. And so that's all I have to report.
Ann?
Yeah, I'd also like to thank Nate for his service to the town, and I just want to remind people that when we hired him and he started, the town office was a shambles because we'd had not one, but two sprinkler leaks that were significant and just trashed this building. And and then we, of course, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so it just was a really difficult time and to start a new job here. And he's helped us in a lot of ways move in the direction we want to get going in, and I really do appreciate his particularly his work in the village and helping us move that along. So again, thank you for your service. In terms of council correspondence and activities, I had a call from a resident who complained that the cemetery hadn't been mowed for the last 2 months, and he was very concerned about it. I just wanted to note that the Cemetery Association receives money from the town, and they manage the mowing, the contract for that. And I don't know what the deal was, but I let him know he needs to follow up with the Cemetery Association on that. And then I noticed that last Friday it did get mowed. So the only involvement the town has in the operation of the cemetery is turning the water on and off, on in the spring, off in the fall. I had another question from a resident regarding Route 100 paving north of Gray Village, and per Tim Estes, this has been pushed back to FY25, and that's an MDOT decision, I believe. I had a question from a resident about the actual current unassigned fund balance on June 30th. Unfortunately, we can't provide that until the fiscal year 23 financials have been audited. We currently have an RFP out for a new auditor. Krista and Nate also mentioned that we met with the state legislative delegation today to discuss the village project and also LD1 issues, and that was a really fruitful, helpful meeting. I've had an invitation from Brandon Pollard to meet him at his cannabis business, and we'll probably do that in the coming month.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, I also want to take a minute to thank Nate for his time and energy and commitment to our town in the last 2.5 years. He came on board just before I started as a counselor, and you were certainly a great mentor, and I appreciate everything you've done for the town, and I do also agree that we're in a much better place on a lot of our projects, including our infrastructure work and just managing day-to-day town activities and our business, rather, I should say. And I hope we can continue that with our new hire, and we will be missed, and wish you the best of luck. Best of luck.
Whether you're in Bolivia or not.
Right, exactly. I had quite a few emails from folks the last couple weeks, a lot of them in relation to the budget. I also was copied on the email Ann just mentioned about the unassigned general fund balance. Ann was kind enough to respond to that. I had another inquiry about our mooring ordinance from Sharon Young, and an offer to go out on the lake. I replied that I was more than happy to do that. We've been kind of playing a scheduling tag, but I hope to do that soon. I had an email from Fran Monroe, or 2 emails from her. One inquiring about who we were hiring for a moderator. Natalie Burns is our suggestion from Jensen Baird to moderate on September 9th. But again, that is technically up to the people in attendance who is selected ultimately. She was also inquiring about whether or not we had written verification from our lawyers in the suggested changes that they made to the organization of our warrants between June and now. I let her know that I had only received that feedback personally, verbally, but had copied Nate, and he was going to get back to her with the communication he had in writing. I also had an email. Yep, go ahead. Did you?
I was just asking him to forward that.
Yeah, he was going to do that. Oh, to all of us?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would
Just
be
to
good.
have that. Yep.
Sure. I also had an email from Mary Underwood noting that she had been contacted to be a presenter at the Maine Council on Aging Summit for her Nordic walking work locally, and she was very excited about that, and we certainly are happy to have her be a representative of our town and the program that she's worked so hard on. Also had an email from Brandon Pollard inquiring whether or not I would like to come and tour his proposed medicinal cannabis facility. We will be scheduling something soon. Had an email from Matthew Dowdy, I believe was his name. I haven't gotten back to him yet. Just thanking us for our work, and he noted he had previously been a town councilor from
Dowdy.
2010. I might have gotten his first name wrong. 2010 to 2016. I have to go back. He was previously a town councilor, and he was just letting us know that he would be happy to help us if we needed any assistance during this budget process. And so, thank you for that. What else? Oh, and I also had an email from Colette Tweeton. I'm probably not saying her last name correctly. She had some concerns about Nate leaving and our audit process and whether or not we would be engaging with an auditor to review the books when he exits. I need to reply to her that, as we noted in the public hearing, that we currently have an RFP out for another audit firm because our current audit firm, well, we wanted to do an RFP anyway because it's a good process every few years to make sure we're retaining a competitive rate for any professional service. But when we put that RFP out, our current auditing firm decided not to submit a proposal. So we are still looking for an auditor and fully intend to have the FY23 books audited, whether or not Nate is leaving, but we will do so as soon as possible. I will get back to her formally over email. And I also had an email from Sandy, just checking in, Sandy Carter, checking in on, she was still hard at work on trying to transfer the council's task list over to Teams. There's been a difficulty with how we're trying to organize the account. The idea was to create a council chair alias under my name that could then be transferred to any future chairs so that we didn't lose all the tracking information that we had input into Teams. It seems that you cannot log in to the council chair email externally, so she's having some issues that we're hoping to work through with staff in the next week or two, and I'll be joining her for that conversation.
Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Sure.
I mean, is it worth it? I mean.
Yeah, I had that thought, so
Okay.
I'm gonna check in with how much she's been able to do and what the process looks like in terms of the capabilities of our stuff, because I really don't see the value in creating all these tasks just under my name, and then if and when I leave, those go away and somebody has to just redo all that as the new chair. I don't see the
Yeah.
value in that. It's not transferable in an efficient way, so.
That document hasn't been anyways, a living document in that way. So I wonder if we're trying to make it something that's not, doesn't really need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Teams, it definitely seems like something that could be valuable in terms of how we manage our projects and the work that we try to collaborate with staff on. But yeah, if there's other technical difficulties that are preventing us from having it be efficient from one session to the next and from one chair to the next, it's a question will ask and get back to you guys on, because I'm not really sure if it's still worth it.
Thank you.
Sure. I think that was everything I had. If I missed something, I will disclose it next time we meet. So I am looking for a motion to adjourn at 9:13 p.m.
So moved?
Second.
Okay. Ann?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Marty?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. So thanks everyone for hanging on, and have a good night. Hope to see everyone on September 9th for the budget vote at the town meeting.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.